So this is a bit odd, because it's not an academic work, it's not a piece of research, it is a call to action. And it's basically a call to action to say that I'm kind of ad-libbing. I have a presentation made, and then I changed it all last night. And I'm now just going to go along and go free flow somewhat. So watch out for the time, do kind of give me a warning and stuff. But anyway, and the reason is because I firmly believe that it's now too late to fix climate change. And I come from 30 years running hedge funds, and since COVID I've been working with grassroots communities. And I come to this out of experience of knowing how real money really works and what people in the poorest communities around the world actually faces. And what I understand from all of this is that we need to personalize climate change so that we can see it as something we can engage with rather than something we fear. And all the talk about from the science about 2100 distance us from that. And all the talk about the economic cost of it also does the same. And the reason why it's important to be here at the home of St. Francis, and I want to thank all the organizers for making this possible, because it takes a lot of work to make something like this work. I'm very grateful for it. Is that I first came to know St. Francis through the hymn, "Make Me a Channel of Your Peace." And many of you probably know that. And I want to take a line from that hymn that says, "And where there is doubt, true faith in you." And that faith element is really important, because when it is too late to fix climate change, and climate change is going to come and cascade into everything that we do, into every one of our experiences, and we are already feeling that. A few years ago, the Mississippi River basically dried up, and that meant that grain from the US, which goes to the rest of the world, had to be shipped in 1/3 of loads because the river depth wasn't deep enough. And that increased the transport cost, basically tripled it. And so that's why all the grain prices increased, that's why all the food prices increased, and that's how it affects you. And it was already happening. Around that time, the River Po in Italy dried up. Nuclear plants in France had to shut 1/3 of their generating power, or 1/2 of their generating power, because they didn't have water to cool them. Germany couldn't restart their coal plants, even though they needed the energy, because they couldn't ship coal along the River Rhine, because it was too shallow. And over that time, everything went up in price. And people talk about it being driven by this or by that, but behind it all, we all live in a world that is physical, and whatever happens to the physical environment affects us. And where the faith comes in is, what do we do when it's already too late? And for that, I want to take the words from another St. Francis of Sales. And he said, "Do not wish to be anything other than what you are, and try to be that perfectly." And when we heard today, this morning, at the plenary keynote lecture, what a lot of what St. Francis was talking about is that relationship we have with each other, with the world around us, as what we are. That's where the valuation of the economics goes wrong, and that's where the faith element, to know that by being what we are, and through the inevitable hardship and pain, we can believe that we will thrive. So, thriving at nature's pace. I've kind of forgotten what I was going to say about that in that way. Except, in some ways, when you think about this, what money does is it tells us we can control the pace of things. When we want to build a dam, we use money to draw a design chart, We use money to bring materials. We use money to set the timeline. So it all becomes our decision, our control. And our world becomes prescribed by our intentions. But even when those intentions are good, we leave others behind. Because our plans cannot include everyone. But if you ask, how does a beaver build a dam? And in Canada, the beaver dam is so large, you can see it from space. And the way it does that, it goes along and gnaws down a tree. The tree gets dragged away. That slows the water. Other insects and plants gather around it. Maybe some fish gathers around, and then the beaver gets to eat. And in the place where that tree and sapling was gnawed down, a bit of light opens up, a bit of space opens up, other things come in. And in every one of those steps, what the beaver has done is to be half a step ahead. It has allowed all the other organisms and animals to come along and take their step, and that's how it finds its direction ahead. And that's what nature's pace does. And in doing that, it is relentless. But it doesn't judge. And we judge all the time. And we judge constantly. And we use our money to judge how our children are going to be educated. We use our money to judge what kind of jobs we think we're qualified for. And in the end, what happens is we end up submitting ourselves increasingly to an economy that truly does not serve us. And it doesn't serve nature, and it doesn't serve our children, it doesn't serve our parents, and it's increasingly leaving us behind. But the problem is we need money. And as a hard-nosed finance guy, it's not possible to live in a world without money. We can't all be like St. Francis and say, chuck it away. And that's where we end up trapping ourselves. We end up using our money to try and shape and protect us from the future. So we end up giving ourselves into a world where money makes money, and that's what it does. That's what all the pensions does, that's what all the savings does. Even when you think you're saving for a college fund for your children, what you're actually doing is you're saving money so that the money makes money in the hope that somehow it will pay for the college fees. But the more money in your fund, the higher the fees get. Because the colleges know how much is in your fund. So they're going to set the fees at the limit of what you can do, and money ends up being the way to regulate who can get the education, who can have a place in the world. Even as we try to use more money for that. And the problem with that is money needs resources to make. It doesn't grow on trees, really. Seems amazing, but it doesn't. It's made by making things that other people buy. I'm wearing a suit here, that's actually quite a low suit now. I had to have it altered, because £140 to get it altered, just widen it by an inch, and I could buy a new one for £40. And there's a guy in India, Chetan, who has this finite earth movement, and he says, you may be able to afford it, but the planet can't. So think where you spend your money, because that's the greatest power that we have, and that's the call to action, that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our ability to spend our money to draw a line in the sand. And we're going to need faith to do this, because we don't know how it's going to work. But what faith does is it allows us to trust. It allows us to trust in a higher power, and it allows us to trust to do things even if we don't know if they will work or not. And that's when the early Christians, when they were called to go out in twos and threes, they did not know what they were going to do or how they were going to do it. But they were going to go there and bring people together. The slowest and fastest, the last and the first, so that we can all move along together. And how are we going to use our money to do that? So, some sums of money are useful to understand. Top 2,000 companies in the world, the Forbes 2000 index. I'm not sure if any of you have thought how much revenues they generate, how much revenues are spent with them. $50 trillion a year. That's how much all the little dollars and pennies we spend add up. So that's tremendous power that is in our hands. Investment savings, about $200 trillion. What people don't realize is 100 trillion of that is going to be transferred over the next 2 critical decades from the hands of the baby boomers, just on the margin of falling inside one, to the younger generation. So my kids are saying, hey, come on, give me something. There's 20 trillion expected to be transferred by 2030. That's in 5 years' time. If this money stays in our investment system, in our investment institutions like BlackRock and Vanguard, kiss your future goodbye. Because it will be invested in the same way, it will be used in the same way, and it will be locked inside the same fiduciary mandates that says the purpose of this money and the purpose of these institutions is to make sure this money makes more money so that it is safe. It doesn't say what it's safe for. It doesn't say who is safe for. It's just that the money is safe. So, what can we do? Nature's money. We're going to use it to create nature's money. How do we do that? We draw a line in the sand of the oil and gas and coal that we use. So there's about 70 years worth of oil, gas and coal, more or less, including amounts that we may explore and discover. And that line in the sand means we ourselves are going to commit to putting a line to how much that will be used. We're not going to petition governments for this. Too late for that. We're not going to back businesses to do their things. Because businesses need their customers. We are the $50 trillion. That's where it comes from. Without us, they don't exist. Without our willingness to spend in the way we do, they don't exist. And our governments will not get the taxes, and they will not get the support. We ultimately are the ones who have that control. So, how do we do this? 3 minutes, so I'm going to hurry on a little bit. So, we can draw a line in the sand and then we buy the ownership of the oil and gas and coal that lie beyond this. 1 barrel equivalent at a time. What does a government want to do with it? It wants to sell it. British Columbia has oil and gas, produces about 300 million barrels of oil and gas a year, gets about $2 billion. That's about $6.50 per barrel when it's in the ground. That's what they get. That's kind of like half the price, a third of the price of a lunch in London. So we can think about how we can actually use our money to do that, and we're going to be smart about it. But once we buy it, we have the ownership. So what can we do? We give it to nature. Transfer the ownership to nature. Nature now becomes a legal person. But we still need money. So we take in exchange a new currency that's made by giving back to nature, dry coins. And we use that new currency so that we change money that is made by taking from nature to money that is made by giving back. How does all that work? So, there are 3 parts to this. The coins themselves is a mechanism. But what we need is for people to understand and explore the future they want, whoever they may be. Those are events that we can organize. They're for-profit events so they can finance itself. And it's called We Are Always Glad You Came. And they can help investors to think about how they invest. They can help businesses to think about what they want to do. And they can help us as people genuinely to explore the shape of the future we want. And then we need one other element, and those are the Thrive Academies. Because it is too late, we are going to find ourselves without enough money. Our economy is going to be such that you can work as hard as you like, but you're still not going to be able to have enough to pay your bills. Not unless you've got some parent who's going to be able to fund you. So we need ways for people to understand how they can make a living as what they are. And that's the Thrive Academies. And it works with a 6-step program for us to thrive at nature's pace. And because it doesn't need fees and it doesn't need money, there is no limit to who can join. And the Thrive Academicians help each other and support each other so that we can all be confident that we will have a place. But we don't make that come about by literally changing our money and changing our relationship with nature. So, connect with me. This is call to action. London Climate Action Week is coming up, week of 20th of June. I want to invite everybody to have online meetings and so on, because there's no need for us to travel these days around the world, and we've got far too much else we've got to do in that way. And what are we going to do? Well, if you're Trekkie, then we're going to boldly go where no man has gone before. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take it into our hands, we're going to face that final frontier, and we're going to go along and say, you know what, it may be too late, but with faith, with trust in nature, with the willingness for us to open our hands to each other, we are going to take hold of our economy, of our oil and gas and coal, and we're going to make that transition come true. Thank you.